Hey everyone, welcome back to Dreadful Discussions. I'm Alex,
And I'm Kirsten.
and tonight we're talking about a hotel
Yes.
and death.
And death. Yes, there's lots of death in this one. There are some places in this world that have a heavy feeling when you visit them. Most of the time, you'll find a plaque or a marker to learn about what happened, who was there, or in some cases, even who died there. When we think about places like these, a few come to mind that most people have heard of. Pearl Harbor, the actual harbor, the Twin Tower Memorial, and even the Holocaust Museum in D.C. But sometimes we can feel this heavy sadness in places where there are no memorials or reasons that seem obvious. But in July 1981, another very heavy place would be created, and this time it would change so many lives and has even impacted anyone in the United States that has been in a commercial building that was built after 1981. So this dreadful discussion is about the gross negligence and incompetence that caused 114 deaths and 216 injuries at the Kansas City Hyatt Hotel. So in the 1970s, little backstory, the U.S. was having like an economic distress time that led businesses to try to build faster and cheaper when new buildings needed to be constructed. So they came up with a new idea called fast track construction, which instead of the typical way of designing a building, which is, you design the building and then you build the building, they decided it would be faster with fast track construction if they were allowed to, design the building as it was being built.
That sounds so stupid.
I mean, yeah, it's a little wordy to describe it.
We're building a building that a bunch of people are going to be in. We'll figure it out as we go.
Kind of. So what
That's
it was
stupid.
Yeah, well, it was meant to be like a collaboration between the owner, an architectural team, structural engineers, and then the contractors so that they could build it faster, better, and cheaper.
It seems to me like if you know what you're building before you build it, you can build it faster and better.
You would think so.
It's hard to build something faster and cheaper and better.
Yeah.
You can build it faster, you can build it cheaper. It's hard to do those two things and also build it better.
Yeah. So the Kansas City Hyatt was one of these fast track projects, and it was beautiful. Stories of rooms opened up to this giant atrium in the center of the hotel, allowing you to look down into the walkway onto it, and then there was walkways that were suspended walkways. On July 17, 1981, 2,000 partygoers filled the atrium, with many of them going out onto the suspended walkways to view the activities. So the suspended walkways were only on the second and the fourth floor. So the third floor had a walkway, but it's not suspended like the other ones are, and it's not in the way of the fourth and the second.
That's probably to give whoever's on the walkway enough space to look up and down and still have a good view.
Yeah, it has a good view all the way around. At 7:05, there was a crack, and the fourth floor walkway fell about 2 inches, and then it hung there for just a few seconds before it collapsed down onto the second floor walkway below, crushing all the people who were on it.
Ugh.
Yeah. Then the second floor walkway, with the weight of the fourth floor walkway on top of it, crashed down into the atrium.
Right.
So
It's got the weight of both walkways and double the amount of people.
Yeah. So 60,000 pounds of metal and concrete came crashing down. Rescuers rushed in to help with the hundreds of people being trapped, but they were met with a very unexpected challenge. So when the walkways collapsed, they pulled out the fire lines, and with the way that the building was constructed, it had huge water tanks to fight fires rather than being tied into a city water line. So that means there's no control valve to this water now, and there's no way to turn it off.
Turn the water off?
Yes. Because there are water lines running through this hotel to fight fires if there was a fire in the hotel.
Right.
And it's not pressurized, it's just through water tanks.
Right. So they're on the roof, I guess?
I would assume so. It didn't say where they were, but they would have had to have been on the roof is the only thing I could think of.
So it ripped out some of these lines and now it's just spewing water?
Everywhere, yeah.
Okay. So it's nice and slick.
Yes. But now the water is flooding into the atrium, which also led to an even bigger problem because along with the water lines, the electrical lines had also been pulled out, and they were dangling into the water, and they were electrocuting people.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And you have to think about this atrium is like a sloped down, so it's now basically becoming a pool.
It's like a big bowl?
Yeah. So this meant that, the electricity had to be turned off to the whole building, which meant everybody that was trapped is now also in complete darkness.
This is a nightmare. This sucks.
Yeah. So like meanwhile, while the water is continuing to accumulate in the atrium and the water level is like starting to rise, and the people that were being trapped, that are already trapped, are now beginning to drown. The ones that are still alive because they can't get out.
So wait, did they both? Yeah. So either you were crushed on the second walkway, and you probably suffered injuries if you were on the fourth walkway.
Yeah.
Falling 2 stories to the second walkway.
Yeah.
So those people are already dead and injured, and then it collapses again, probably crushes some people below it.
Because think about it, there was 2,000 people that were on between in the atrium and in the walkways.
Yeah, I get it. So now the people on the top walkway were probably injured when it fell onto the second walkway. The people on the second walkway were crushed by the walkway above it, and then they both fell, and the people on the ground floor below that were crushed. Then it starts filling up with water, and the water becomes electrified, so some people are electrocuted or severely shocked.
Yeah.
And by the time they maybe get the electric off, if at all, now you're in darkness. If you're still alive, you're trying not to drown. Some people are drowning.
Yeah, well, they got the electric off.
Yeah.
That seemed to be fairly quick. They turned the electric off to the whole building.
This is an insane snowball catastrophe.
It really is. This is some Final Destination stuff.
Yeah.
So, the Kansas City fire chief saw that the atrium was filling with water, and so he ran to a nearby construction site and stole a bulldozer and drove it into the front of the building, creating a hole so the water would escape.
That sounds like good thinking.
Yeah, like
and
I was like,
thinking.
yeah, it was like super fast.
Good for him.
Yeah. So in response to this ongoing tragedy, every firefighter, EMT, and every ambulance in the entire region was dispatched to the Hyatt. So, but because they couldn't get people out, and like so there's 5 area hospitals around there, they all sent their doctors there to help them because they couldn't get people. They couldn't get people from the Hyatt to the hospital, so they're sending their doctors there.
Right. There's so many people, you can't transport them all.
Yeah.
You have to bring the medical staff there.
And they did.
Yeah.
So for many people, there was no hope. Like, they already knew they were going to die. So they went ahead and gave those people morphine, and they said a lot of them just held their hand while they died because they couldn't save them. Other people, on the other hand, had their limbs amputated. Some of them with chainsaws.
Because that's what they had?
That's what they had. So that's what they used.
Now, I only did a little bit, a very short time in the medical field. But triage, I mean, it's awful for all the people there, right? It's awful for all the victims because they're dying and injured and in pain. But it's awful for the responders too because you have to choose not to help this person or not to try and save these people. There's so many of them that you can't. So it sucks for everybody.
It really does. And that was the thing, even with having every firefighter, every EMT, every cop, everybody that was there, you're still making those decisions. You can't save everybody.
Yeah. I guarantee you those people are traumatized.
Oh, I'm sure.
A lot of them. And don't get me wrong, anyone in the medical field that stays in the medical field, you have a mindset.
Oh, yeah.
You're more well equipped to handle things.
Yeah.
But that's still gonna mess with you.
Yeah, exactly. So for 14 hours, they fought and saved people's lives. But in the end, 114 people still died and 216 were injured.
How many people died?
114.
And so 114 deaths and
216 people were like severely injured.
Severely injured.
That does not include the mental issues that people suffered after that. Sorry, people. Or anything like that. That's just the people who got severe medical treatment. Yeah, so we have to go back to when the building was actually being built. So suspended walkways were invented by Jack D. Gillum and Associates, which is like an engineering company.
Suspended walkways or these suspended walkways?
Everything I kept thinking, it said suspended walkways, and they built these walkways. So I think this was like their signature design or something, or maybe this was the first time they ever built it. Like the guy invented it for this. Yeah,
maybe this particular design. I can't imagine this is when suspended walkways were built. Yeah. I mean, the Golden Gate Bridge is a suspended bridge, and it's...
Yeah, but this is only suspended, we're going to find out, well, it's supposed to only be suspended with one rod. So, like, it called, like, this specific suspended walkway called for a giant metal rod to be anchored into the ceiling and then brought down to the 4th floor where it would be anchored to the walkway, and then it would continue on to the 2nd floor where it would also be anchored to that walkway.
This isn't a vertical orientation like a fire pole?
Yes.
Okay. I imagined a rod when you said one rod, like a curtain rod.
No.
That it was actually hung on from cables or something.
Yeah, no, this is just one to the top to the bottom is what it was supposed to be.
So it connects in one point.
To the ceiling.
And then, to the bridge, the walkway. It connects in one area.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the bridge is supported from that.
Mm-hmm.
Or not supported.
Not supported. So that's what we're about to talk about. So the investigation found that Gillum had only done the preliminary structural calculations on that design, and he never actually finalized them. And like the result would be that the rod was only able to actually even take 60% of the dead load on that walkway.
Mm-hmm.
So not trying to be too technical, but a dead load is the weight of the walkway by themselves, and then the live load is the weight of the people on top of the walkways.
Right. So whatever the maximum load, you take the maximum load, subtract the weight of the structure itself.
Yes.
And whatever's left over is your, what load? What's it called?
Live load.
Live load.
Yes. Yeah. Now, this is the problem here.
But you can't max that out.
Here's the thing. It was only going to hold 60% of the dead weight. Where was the other 40% coming from? It needs to at least hold 100% of the dead weight.
The design could only handle 60% of the weight of the materials to make the thing.
Yes. That's the problem.
Right. So it's already way overweight without anyone even on.
Yeah, it couldn't hold any amount of live load because it was only holding 60%.
And they knew this.
I'm going to say yes. They swear up and down they didn't know this. But they just said he didn't do all the calculations needed to even know that this would work. Like, structural engineers have to do the math.
Of course you have to do the math.
Yeah, to figure this out. But, like, even them going back, like, the investigation going back to his original designs, found out that the design he said, it's going to work fine, would only hold 60%, even if they did it to that speculation. Or specs. Okay,
so the design itself is already flawed. It can't even hold itself up properly.
Not for long, yeah.
How do you not know this?
Well...
How do you not know this at the time?
Oh, it gets better.
How was this determined, and when was it determined they could only hold 60% of its own weight?
Well, here's the thing. This was the original design that was originally approved for this building.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they went back and found that out during the investigation of what happened and how it happened and why it happened.
I know. So this is very shortly after.
Yes.
So it's easily possible for them to calculate this.
Mm-hmm.
They should have been able to calculate it no problem before putting people on it.
Yes.
Before building it, right?
Yeah. I have more information you're going to want.
Okay.
Right. So, but unfortunately, that was only the beginning of the problems for this walkway. So during the design and the manufacturer of the rods identified that, like, hey, there's a problem, and like for the walkway.
Mm-hmm.
So it was but the problem was that, like, the rod would need to be threaded from the second floor all the way up to the top of the fourth floor. It would have to be a threaded rod instead of just a regular rod, which is what they ordered.
So this rod is connected to the walkway like a bolt?
Kind of, yeah. Like, it didn't show me how they were going to anchor it.
Right.
But it's getting anchored to each level as it comes down from the ceiling.
Well, yeah, it has to.
Yeah. So the manufacturer was like, hey, this needs to be threaded for it to work. You didn't want it threaded, but it needs to be threaded to work.
Mm-hmm.
But the threads can get damaged during installation. So the rod manufacturer called the structural engineer at Gillum and proposed that instead of one rod going all the way down from the ceiling, that they would break it in half, and they would run a rod down from the ceiling to the fourth floor, anchor it to that fourth floor walkway, and then a different rod would go from the fourth floor to the second floor, like they're next to each other, but it's not one solid rod.
Meaning the walkways are offset like this?
No.
Or meaning the rods are going to be...
The rods are offset. So the ceiling to the fourth floor.
Yeah.
And then the fourth floor is now supporting the second floor. The rod would have been threaded, and it would have actually been able to hold 60% of each floor load. Still was flawed, but it would have been able to hold 60% of each floor load. Instead, because the way along it was and all that, the guy went into a real detailed explanation. But what actually happened was, since they cut it in half, the ceiling was holding up the fourth floor and the fourth floor only. And now the fourth floor is also trying to hold up the second floor. So now, instead of being able to hold up 30 tons for each one, that fourth floor is now trying to support 60 tons on its own with a rod that can't support that.
Right. Okay. I get what you're saying. You're saying
Yeah.
the original design, the ceiling, the supports on the ceiling are
Yes.
taking all the weight
Yes.
of both walkways.
Yeah.
And this way, the ceiling anchors the fourth one. So, of course, it's still taking the weight of the second one, but the fourth floor walkway is taking the weight of the second one as well.
Yes.
Whereas before, it would have been on that rod and not hanging off the fourth floor.
Yes, it's hanging off the fourth floor.
I got you, yeah.
Okay. So, the way if they broke it into 2 rods, then that would mean that only a small portion of the rods would need to be threaded, which would make it cheaper, easier, and faster. So over the phone, like the guy just made a phone call, like the engineer said, that sounds great, let's do it. And he never even looked at the original design. Like he didn't know what the original design was, and he also didn't perform any calculations on the change of the load to see if it was even feasibly possible to make this change.
The man who did the engineering for this.
Yeah, the actual engineer was just like, yeah, it's fine. Told the manufacturer to go with it.
Okay. The manufacturer is just making these rods to their specs, right?
Yeah, and the guy was like, hey, it would make more sense and it'd be cheaper for you if we could break it in 2, but I don't even know if the guy knew what it was for.
Yeah, I was going to say it depends.
Yeah.
If there's any fault that lies with the manufacturer, it would be because he knew what it was for and still proposed these changes. If he was just like, hey, I know you ordered this and it was supposed to be this strong or whatever, but we can't do it that way the way you want it.
Yeah.
You could do 2 of them or whatever.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's not his fault.
Yeah,
and you would think like when you tell the engineer, if you're just a manufacturer, you're not an engineer probably.
Yeah.
I mean, you might be, but not what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
He's like an architect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ultimately on him. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not done telling you about all the terribly completely avoidable mistakes that they have made.
In the name of speed?
This one actually just seems to be stupidity.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, it's already stupid.
I know. Okay. So to make the connection from rod number 1 to rod number 2, okay? They used a square metal tube with a washer and a nut going through a hole drilled through the channel, which is the tube. To make the square tube, they took one single piece of steel and bent it into a square, and then they welded it closed.
Okay.
Okay? But the welded line is where they drilled the hole to put the fasteners in. So that's the weakest point of this steel is where you have welded it together.
Yeah.
And that's where they decided was a good spot to put the holes. Yeah. Like I said, that one was just stupidity. So what that means is when the weld broke by itself and then the flanges collapsed in the tube and they bent down like they were, from the picture, it looked like they were supposed to be kind of like teeth holding it still.
Yeah, so the weld broke, and then the flanges had more of the load put on them when the weld broke?
Yes. And so that's why they suspected that it stood for the 2 seconds that it did once it broke. It was the flanges holding them up.
Yeah.
But that's not what they were meant for.
Right.
Yeah. So the connection point went all the way through the anchor, and that's why the walkway collapsed. And this is where we get a little bit of justice for this, but not much. So the engineering firm lost its license in 4 states, not all 4 states, in 4 states. So then the individual engineers that had signed off on everything, including the guy that told them over the phone that like, hey, it's fine, they all lost their engineering license. There was no criminal charges for anybody. Because I don't know, at what point does it become criminally negligent? But I kind of feel like 114 people dying is criminally negligent.
When that's your job, I understand mistakes happen, and you need to do everything you can to mitigate mistakes. But when it's that big of a deal, like if you design a bridge that can't even hold itself up, I don't even know how you became an engineer in the first place.
Yeah. So the insurance companies for the owner, the contractor, and the designers ended up paying over $140 million in damages. And this accident, it did change the way buildings were created. So now you have to have a whole lot more documentation.
Oh, I would imagine it would change some laws.
Yeah, exactly. And like you can't just call somebody and change something. You have to now prove why it's necessary, why it's needed, and do all the math and present all the things and all that before building inspectors will say, yes, you can change anything.
Right. And I know some of that's in theory versus practice. It's not always going to work that way.
Yeah.
But at least it's doing as much as you can before you build it and actually test it. If you show all your math and calculations, you should overbuild anything that involves people being on it.
Yeah.
You know?
So you can still go to the hotel, but it's no longer owned by Hyatt. And you'll see that all the debris has been removed and the walkways were reinstalled correctly. But what you're not going to find is a memorial or a plaque. Nothing to say that anybody died there.
No, they're a hotel.
Exactly.
They're doing business. They don't want to advertise. Look at all the people that died here because this hotel is bad.
Yeah.
Someone designed this hotel badly and it killed a bunch of people. Enjoy your stay.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that, it's a terrible thing, and I understand that people don't go on vacation or go to hotels to learn about death.
I mean, yeah, I know. And I'm sure the rest of the building is, well, I'm not sure, but hopefully I assume the rest of the building is designed like the walls are designed with conventional, tested, tried and true means.
But people do say that, like, when you're in the atrium and stuff, because they rebuilt the atrium, they rebuilt everything, that, like, you can feel, like, in certain times that, like, it doesn't feel, I don't know, not heavy.
Well, yeah, a lot of people will say anywhere with, a lot of death.
That's a lot.
You're going to, some people can feel it. Some people are more sensitive to it than others.
Yeah.
Some people, if they don't know about it especially, might go there, stay there, and never notice anything.
Yeah.
Some people that don't know about it might go there and just feel it the whole time.
Yeah.
Some people that do know about it might feel it only because they know about it.
Yeah.
Some people might know about it and not feel it at all.
There you go. There's how gross negligence killed 114 people and scarred so many more.
Yeah. How many people lived and were severely maimed?
See, I don't know. It doesn't say a lot about the other people, but it just says, 216 people were injured, and we know they all lived, but we also know that there was about 2,000 people in the hotel when that happened.
Right.
So.
Well, that's, even if you survived, like you didn't get electrocuted, you didn't get crushed, you didn't drown, you're still, that's a lot of damage emotionally.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
I don't know. All these people were, I assume when you were talking about all that money, it was for compensation for these people?
Oh, I'm sure. It didn't, a lot of it was undefined settlements. So.
Right.
So I'm assuming that's what it is for people who were in the hotel.
Yeah. And I'm sure their families and the families of the people that died.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it does say there was 2,000 guests in there, so you're also thinking there's also hotel staff there, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, staff and everyone else.
Yeah.
Wonder if that engineer ever walked on that walkway.
I don't know.
I'd like to know if he ever walked on it.
I don't know. I know that he can't practice. He's not an engineer anymore.
Nor should he be.
Yeah.
It takes me a week to choose a new oil filter for my truck.
It really does.
I can't imagine. I just can't imagine this. This is insane. It pisses
terrible.
me off. This is someone with a fantasy of being an engineer. They don't want to do the math. They don't enjoy that kind of stuff. They just want to have a creation that's theirs and say, look, I did something. No one else has done this.
Yeah.
They're like an artist, except your art killed a bunch of people.
Yeah. So.
If you design buildings, if you engineer vehicles, planes, anything like that, you can't afford to f*** up.
And you should be mad.
And there are too many companies that, I understand to a degree if you're making a household product or something, But I understand trying to make it cheaper and trying to build it faster. And those things are fine if you can do it without sacrificing quality, right? Or safety, especially.
Yeah.
Anything that can catch on fire or break and kill you, don't skimp. And that goes for companies too.
Yeah.
Especially.
People, companies, everybody.
When you make a product that people are going to use, safety should be number one. Quality should be second. And once you have those things ironed out, then you can refine that process to get cheaper and faster production.
Okay.
Well, that was dreadful.
I told you it would be.
Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up. It really helps. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you'd like to see.
Like, subscribe, do all the cool things.
Well, this is the part where Kirsten says bye.
I was about to.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, bye.